So, today we're gonna be calling about Maeghar, which is what happens when anyone that has Fey blood gets embraced to be a vampire inside the Vampire the Masquerade universe. And the background picture is a niche meme from 4 years ago. I'm gonna link the link down in the description down below, but even the comments are saying that this meme is very, very niche because most people that play Vampire the Masquerade don't really worry about bloodlines, especially bloodlines that are as rare as these ones. So if you remember, we have already covered Cassid and how all Fey-blooded vampires were called Cassid at the beginning, and then Cassids have asserted themselves as the only type of Cassid, so the rest got renamed to Maeghar. Well, to begin with, one very important distinction is that Maeghar are not really a bloodline. It's more of a way to call all Fey-blooded vampires. They do not share the same clan or background. It's just if anyone with Fey blood gets embraced to be a vampire, they don't really get through the embrace properly and they become a Maeghar instead. Now, Maeghar, due to their Fey blood, tend to look weird. And their appearance will range from very subtle weird, like paper white skin with ebony black hair, that would be extremely subtle, to something a lot less subtle, like 6 arms, or jewels for eyes, or any skin tone imaginable. They don't really need to have very human characteristics, and these kind of characteristics develop at random and with no rhyme or reason to them, so no two Maeghar are alike. Maeghar act in a way that you would expect the Fae to act a little bit, so they're kind of disturbing. After being told to fuck off by the Kiasid people, they are mostly solitary wanderers that travel from place to place. They avoid Sabbat and Marconius Cassid brood for obvious reasons. They will normally be carrying around a singular prized and disturbing collection of some small item on them, and the things that they collect can include things like children's teeth, finger bones, or even broken dreams, because once again, they're part Fae, so they are allowed to be very, very weird. Maeghar rarely embrace, as in rarely create new vampires, and the new vampire that they will create will just reflect their own clan as the vampire clan, unless they were also Fey-blooded. The only way to create a Maeghar is to mix a Fey-blooded person with vampire blood. Therefore, having another Maeghar as the person that turns you into a vampire doesn't really come with any benefits whatsoever. It doesn't make you any more likely or less likely to become a Maeghar, because the only condition for you becoming a Maeghar is you being of Fey origin to begin with. Unlike Kiasid, whose, well, curse actually passes down completely fine. The weaknesses that Maeghar experience are threefold. They are vulnerable to cold iron, the same as Kiasid. All rolls to identify them as otherworldly are reduced by 1, as well, you know, just look at them. And they are repulsed by drinking from mortals directly, so they normally require blood to be drained into a container. Some of the applications that I've seen are even more bizarre. Like, I think it was in Beckett's diary that described one of them like carrying around a straw and like destroying a person before drinking from them. But yeah, they're a bit icky about that. When Maeghar were still Cassid, before they were forced to leave and become Maeghar, even those embraced that did not have Fey blood became a Kiesid, and they could drink from mortals directly, just like a Kiesid can. So, there's some really weird things inside Vampire the Masquerade where the way that you're distinguished and sorted into boxes really, like, it really changes in how the curse interacts with you. So the moment when they accepted that they're no longer Kiesid and left that group, their curse changed as well. Remember when I told you in the previous episode that even Maeghar, weirdly enough, are easier to play than a Kiesid? Because they can actually work with other vampires for prolonged amounts of time. Well, they are solitary, and they're more interested in Shadowlands than contact with the world of the living, so they like to spend time in the world of the dead, like necromantic bloodlines would. When they meet another of their kind, the exchange will be brief and polite, and both will leave each other behind. They're not interested in staying as a group, but they do recognize that they need some sort of protection. And as such, Maeghar used to align themselves with Talmahera, or otherwise known as the True Black Hand. But Talmahera has fallen off completely. Like, they were dealt quite a few blows with the world of the dead getting nuked, of all things, and then the Week of Nightmares happened with, the... I'm trying to remember what the Traveler vampires were named, and all I can recall for some reason is ramen, which is definitely not what they're called, but remember that my brain likes to just fail me sometimes like this. Anyway, there is a clan of travelers, which I have definitely covered on this channel before, that, well, Ravnas! There we go! They were Ravnas! I finally recalled them! Yay! Okay, the clan of travelers was actually Ravnas. So they're like third generation vampire rose, and there was a big fight about that, and Talmahera, the True Black Hand, was kind of assisting the antediluvians, and then they went to help the third generation of Ravnos, and he didn't even recognize them. He was very, well, wildly using all of his abilities and destroying everything in his path. So that was a big blow to them as well. So to cut things short, in the 2000s, Talmahera is pretty much no more. But we can infer that Maeghar are still a thing, considering that the only thing that you need to make a Maeghar is a combination of Fey-born, like Fey-blooded person and a, well, vampire that's willing to turn them into a vampire. That means that no matter what timeline you're in, Maeghar is just something that will repeatedly occur, at the very least, as accidents. And if they're willing to work with any kind of like niche group in order to stay safe inside the bigger world of darkness, because obviously the world isn't very safe for them, that means that you can kind of easily paint one into a game. So they are quite alien, but unlike Kiesids, which very much shun working with any vampires whatsoever, Maeghar will work with a group for their own survival, and therefore, no matter they like or don't like surrounding vampires, and no matter they would like to be alone or not be alone, they're likely to take up work contracts in exchange for, safety and just a place to exist. So you could incorporate them in a story that focuses on Giovanni, for example, and any other necromantic bloodline, because Maeghar are also interested in Shadowlands and necromancy. You could even incorporate them into a Camarilla or an Anarch playthrough, because Maeghar stay away from the Sabbat. The Sabbat is associated with Kiesid, but it doesn't state that they stay away from other groups. As long as the group is like, yeah, we're not gonna hunt you and you can stay here, but like, work for us, they would be like, okay. They're still weird and very much, well, fey-blooded. Like, nothing quite says weird as collecting broken dreams or, children's teeth or finger bones. They will be very much into their collection, and the way that they act towards mortals or other vampires is likely not gonna be culturally up to par or polite, let's say, especially if they see nothing wrong with their own behavior. Because, well, once again, they're part Fae. They're more remote from mortals than a regular vampire would be. So, they be weird. Yo. They'd be weird, but unlike Kiesid, they are not super they're not objecting to working with other vampires, which means that playing them in like a campaign would be a bit easier. As I said in the previous episode, I was gonna show you what their symbol looks like, so that's like right at the top above the meme. That is what their symbol looks like, and as you can see, it's very close to the Kiesid symbol, except instead of the necromantic skull, they get a blood drop, and they once again get like, I think this would be a moth because it's very fat-bodied, but they get like a moth or a butterfly, which is a Fae symbol, so it's literally like Fae with vampire blood in them effectively, which would translate really well into what Maeghar are. As far as their disciplines go, they have Mytherceria or Necromancy, depending on the edition, just like Kiesid. So we have already talked about Mytherceria in the previous episode. It is the Fae-like ability that allows you to determine whether a statement is a lie, sense changelings and Fae glamours, speak riddles that make people do nothing but sit and ponder it, place symbols to confuse and disorient people, that sort of thing. If you're playing an edition that's earlier, in the second edition I believe they get Necromancy, just like Kiesid do, in which case you would be dealing with all things dead, and their obsession with Shadowlands kinda remains in all editions. Therefore, no matter you have Necromancy or don't have Necromancy, you do kinda not super exist in the mortal realm. You will be crossing over into like the Shadowlands, into the dead realm, quite on the regular basis, because that's just how Maeghar be. They don't quite fit in the mortal world, and they don't stay around it for too long. They like to, well, travel into the dead realm and traverse between the two on the regular. And for the rest of their disciplines, this will depend on the clan that they were made into a vampire of. So you have a much bigger variety of what a Maeghar can be. So, you can have a Toreador Maeghar, or you can have like a Gangrel Maeghar, unlike Kiesid, which is very specifically a split from the La Sombra bloodline. I'm gonna read to you the meme because that's pretty much all that we have left to do. I'm pretty sure that I have explained Maeghar quite well. They don't have much history on their own because, once again, they're not quite a bloodline, they're just like a grouping of Fey-blooded vampires. It's a way to call Fey-blooded vampire. And their history pretty much matches up with Kiesid's history up until Kiesids were like La Sombra-born Kiesids from the Marconius line are the only valid Kiesids, and Maeghar were like, fair enough, we're just gonna leave that dude alone and walk away. The Virgin Kiesid versus the Chad Maeghar. For Kiesid, you have became Fey through vampiric alchemy. Great-great-grandpa was a La Sombra. Looks like a space alien dressed like a Victorian FOP. Stole the name Kiesid. Attends clan-wide Grand Symposium every 50 years in Strasbourg. Long spidery limbs. Solid black eyes. Glows faintly blue. Lives among piles of dusty tomes. Can hide among mortals with some effort. Is basically a librarian. Loyal to the Sabbat. And like, put an asterisk in that because from the newest happenings, they are not Sabbat anymore. They're now considered to be Camarilla. But in both cases, their allegiance when it comes to a faction is so not important because the factions never call upon them for like anything or ask them to do anything. It is literally like leave the Kiesid alone, so it's kind of like in word only. I would also say that whoever made this meme, it would be kind of hard if you're like 7 foot tall, blue-skinned, black-eyed thing to hide among humans. Like, you would definitely stand out in the crowd. You're really tall. Unless a Kiesid decided to only embrace midgets. In that case, if you were 3 to 4 feet in height, you would probably stretch to be about 5 to 6 feet in height, so you would still look really odd, but at the very least, proportionally, you wouldn't really stand out in the crowd. Now, for Maeghar's side, was born a Fey-blooded mortal, can be embraced into any clan, creates accessories out of the skin hair bones of his victims, because once again, they can have an obsession and they can see absolutely nothing wrong with, like, collecting finger bones or hair or something like that. It's a very Fey thing. Allowed the Kiesid to steal their identity. Is genuinely pained when around other Maeghar. Can manifest weird traits like multiple extra limbs during the embrace. Literal gemstones for eyes. Like, asterisk there, not everybody. Like, whatever traits that they manifest around the embrace time is whatever traits that they manifest. They normally won't all come in the same package, so while some of them might have 4 eyes, some of them might have like 4 arms, 6 arms, 8 arms. Some of them might be blue or green or have gemstones for eyeballs, or maybe their nose falls off. Anything goes, pretty much, as far as weird is concerned. Like, anything. Their appearance can be literally anything, and it's all gonna stem from the fact that the person had Fey blood in them. They might not even have known that they had Fey blood in them, it's just that the vampirism kind of really pushes that part of them forward. Can be any color. Slips between the Skinlands and the Underworld, because once again, they walk the Shadowlands pretty often. That's the Underworld. The Skinlands is like the mortal world because of their slight obsession with like death and necromancy and otherworldly places. A walking, talking masquerade violation. Unless, of course, your description of a Maeghar was like, oh, their skin is like really pale and they have really black hair, so they kind of come off as a bit unusual, but nothing too bad. Is most likely abducting neighborhood children for necromantic experiments. Honestly, fair. Like, there's no predicting a Maeghar. Whatever their obsession is whatever their obsession is, and they don't normally act in a way that's like humanly acceptable. True Black Hand member, and put an asterisk in that because that's Tel Mahara and they have collapsed. So not anymore. They were, and now they aren't. There you go. That would be the Maeghar. What do you think about the Maeghar? Would you play one? I kind of like Hyacid's more for, weirdly enough, still being more in tune with their like humanity and being closer to the human world. But you could play a Maeghar in a campaign easier because, as I said, they will work with other vampires for safety and protection. So if they ended up most of the time living inside an anarch city, they would start working for the anarchs, presumably. If they end up living in the Camarilla city, they might end up working for the Camarilla just to, like, keep themselves safe. And of course, any necromantic bloodlines crosses over with Maeghar very well because they tend to wander the Shadowlands and they have kind of united interest in the death and dead to an extent. So while Maeghar are very weird and inhuman, they play with other vampires a lot better than Hyasid do, which legitimately want to be left alone and be entirely like work-consumed loners, even though the things that they're fascinated by and the things that they do are more socially acceptable when it comes to both vampire and human regular moral standards, while Maeghar will do whatever Maeghar will do. So, you know, they're a lot more inhuman, I would say. Like, their ties to humanity are practically just not there on the account of them being part Fae. Would you ever, like, play a Maeghar or a Hyasid at all? Would you like involve them in your campaign? Have you ever involved any of them in your campaign, either like as an NPC or as an enemy or as a player character? I would love to hear how other people incorporated them because things that cross over between multiple different types of supernatural are just so cool, but they're also so niche that you will practically never encounter them in a Vampire the Masquerade game ever. So if anyone has encountered them or has used them, I would love to hear as to how. Other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope I'm gonna see you on my other videos. Next week we're gonna be talking about gargoyles, which is another thing that's semi-vampire adjacent, but not really. It's like its own thing, born out of magic and vampires, so, you know, something that's worth covering. Other than that, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for my lovely Patreon supporters for supporting me and allowing me to make videos just these.